podcast pals. It is yet another episode of the With Purpose podcast. And so, with that, welcome. The thought and the conversation for the day, or the theme of the day today, is leadership is in your absence. Leadership is in your absence. Well, you see, for many years, I stood astute to this thing called leadership, and I naturally had a mirage of questions. Yeah. And the most fundamental of which, what is leadership? Well, with my background, I've had the privilege and the honor to really have palpable experiences with different schools of thought and on leadership, and ultimately different methodologies in which leadership was delivered. And as you would have guessed, I still had that lingering thought or question in the back of my head, and that was, what is leadership? Yeah. Have you ever walked into a room and been told, well, do not sit over there? That is for dignitaries and the leaders of the house. Yeah. In some settings, you don't need anyone to say anything. The seats themselves speak aloud and say, reserved. You ever walked into a room and you look at the seats and the seats say, reserved? You know you're not the one. That's not you. That is reserved. Again, what makes a leader a leader? And what is it really to lead? Is it the dominance in your character? The loud or deep voice we hear when you speak? Or the esteemed resume you carry along with you in every room? Again, what is it to lead? So, I find it more useful to adopt mental models from first principles. They tend to be great heuristics when decoupling complex and loaded concepts as we have leadership. Yeah? Before we get into it even more, I like how Simon Sinek puts it. He says, quote, the real job of a leader is not about being in charge. It is about taking care of those in our charge. End quote. But by the way, if you haven't, do have a look at some of Simon's studies on leadership. They tend to have in them this they tend to have in them this, I should say, underlying message that conveys, don't take yourself too seriously. It is less about you than you may know. So, right back to the notion of the day here. From a fundamental point of view, had you asked anyone what leading or leadership was, this is the tone in response you would get. Leadership is being able to take a group, that could be a group of people or things, from point A to point B. Or perhaps it would sound like anything or anyone that shows direction to a destination. That is leadership. Well, yes, correct. That is A plus for both definitions here. They would both be on the money. No question about that. So clearly what we have here is a sophisticated subject, a much more nuanced notion. Yeah. Anytime many versions of a thing are true, then the thing in question by definition is sophisticated, nuanced, and needs to be broken down into specificity. I have a saying of my own that I quote often, and that is, averages are hostile to specificity. Averages are hostile to specificity. What this means really is that should you at any point in time derive the truth from commonality or what is most believed about the subject, you would have robbed yourself of a personalized experience about the subject for which you derive that so called common knowledge. Yeah? Without getting too far out from our theme of the day, anyone in business today will tell you that personalization has changed the way business is done and increased customer relevancy and satisfaction. Hence, averages are hostile to specificity. It's really that first principle mental model. So let's get specific. Leadership. Imagine having a business and there you are running the business day in and day out. As an entrepreneur, it would be a privilege for you to take a day off or a weekend off. This thing called work life balance is a fallacy. The business needs you to survive. Well, you survived the first year, you got it the second year. On the third year, you are airborne and have survived the valley of death. So, customers have come in and you can afford that weekend off, and things are at a much better place. You've become an overseer, you have teams under you, subordinate, and you feel really good about yourself at the moment. And this is great, except for one thing: your leadership has not been tested yet. Your leadership has not been tested yet. If you're a builder, you would know that the job is not finished until you have tested your work. Here's the introspective question you would ask: how would life look like for the business given I took 90 days away from the business? By the way, that is the critical window for a leader to establish the leadership style. Yeah? So take a moment and paint the picture. What would life look like had you been away, on off, email off, away from the business for 90 days? So, very quickly, we realize that leadership is about making oneself dispensable. Leadership is about releasing yourself from the job. Watch this. Every parent has the urge to be grandparent. In the same way, every tree cannot help it but sprout a new tree out of it. What it is really is, how can I make myself irrelevant quickly so that I may survive and remain? It is paradoxical in nature. And so to that I say, leadership, the art of self sequestration. Let's travel back to a moment in time, shall we? Kodak, once a giant in film and photography, missed the window of innovation. So, long story short, is that the result of that led to bankruptcy. What innovation is really, it is like the saying, out with the old, in with the new. And so is the concept of leadership, if we're being specific. Out with the old, in with the new. Leadership is a convoluted term. It is, in layman terms, enablement, making able. When leading a team or a business, leadership is enabling the team to fly on their own, bring in new ideas and refresh the old. And it is making yourself dispensable. And the ultimate test to that is your absence. How does life look like when you're out of town? When you've left the building, does it catch on fire? Have you missed the window of innovation? Your team's dependency on your presence is indicative of the quality of the leadership you exude. See, leadership is selfless and comes with no job security. It is in times of crisis that the captain of the ship is invoked upon. Any other time, they're dispensable. And that is innovation, the art or notion of novelty. Bankruptcy in itself is predictable. The moment you stop making yourself dispensable, you die. In nature, it is said, you go extinct. In fashion, you go out of style. In business, you go bankrupt. In relationships, you divorce. And in wisdom, you become irrelevant. So, what I'm attempting to convey here is don't take yourself too seriously. Life isn't that serious, your work is. And the testament to your leadership is found in your absence. And as a leader, you are called to self relegate. Till next time, cheers.